right. So hello everyone. If you just joined in, welcome to WhaleFest 2020. We're going to begin in just a minute, but you should be seeing me. My name is Lauren Wild. I'll be your moderator for today's WhaleFest, and we're going to get started here. So today's festival will run until about 1 o'clock. And I'm really excited for you all to be able to join us virtually at our first virtual WhaleFest. We've got a lot to go over today, so we're just going to jump right in here, and we're going to watch a few welcome videos from some of our directors.
It's my honor to begin Sitka WhaleFest this year by saying how grateful we are to be on Tlingit Ani, the traditional ancestral land of the Tlingit people, who have been here for thousands of years and have taken good care of this very special place and share it generously with us today. I'm Lisa Bush, the Executive Director of the Sitka Sound Science Center, a nonprofit dedicated to science research and science education in Alaska. The Sitka Sound Science Center, along with many partners, puts on Sitka WhaleFest. This year, our 24th year, you are part of a pioneering moment as we launch our first virtual WhaleFest. So hooray for all of us. Sitka WhaleFest is about celebrating the marine environment and also about sharing knowledge. We believe science should not be done in a vacuum. It's meant to be shared. Communicating science is part of the culture of science, and it means a great deal to the very special presenters we have lined up for you to have the chance to tell you about what they do, why they do it, and what they're learning. We hope you engage by writing questions and comments in the chat, as questioning is also important to science research and science education. The Science Center's staff, board, and members look forward to this flagship event each year as it reminds us of what is marvelous and wonderful about scientific discovery and what great people are involved and enthusiastic about marine sciences. Big scientific ideas often come from different worldviews. The Sitka Sound Science Center knows the power of integrating indigenous culture with scientific thinking, and we hope that maybe some big ideas could come from working together. Please join me in welcoming Chuck Miller, who is the Culture and Community Liaison for the Sitka Tribe of Alaska. Born and raised in Sitka, Chuck is an elder in training under the guidance of his great-uncle Herman Davis, and he is the caretaker of his traditional clan house in Sitka. Thank you, Chuck, for kicking things off with a Tlingit welcome for Sitka WhaleFest.
Welcome, all of you who have come to WhaleFest 2020. My name is Chuck Miller. I'd like to introduce myself and welcome you in our traditional manner here in the Sitka area amongst our Tlingit people. Gudach yak saya Gunilchish Hati Adi Anyat Kusani Gunilchish Hati Kaudayayi Shit Kadeki Tini Yakayadi to Tini Dana Hilsek Yuhatu Wasak Look Nahadi Ayachat Kayashka Hitana Yachat Deki na Yadechatsiti Kagwantan Dachana Yachat. What I said to all of you is amongst our people is what they refer to as a traditional welcome to our shores. When the canoes would travel from the many different villages to attend specific ceremonies, the leaders of the village would get together, the ones who owned the land. They would welcome the people ashore, but the first question that they would ask is, "Where is your canoe from?" And they would answer in return as to where they were from and what their business was there, because it was against our traditional protocols to land ashore before being allowed to come ashore. So I'd like to welcome you all ashore here virtually to Sitka. This is the name of our ancient village where I live today in our clan house. As you can see, some of the artwork behind me is our clan screen, like our coats of arms for my clan. I'll finish introducing myself. What I said to you in my language is, thank you so much for being here. Welcome, please come ashore, most honorable guests. I also told you my name. My Tlingit name is Danach Ilsik. I carry that name very proudly today. It was my great uncle's name. My grandmother used to always tell me, "You have my uncle's name. You have to have big shoulders to carry that name." So I carry it very proudly today. I wear the headband that he wore when he was alive. It's been handed down from him to his nephew, to his nephew, to me. It's well over 100 years old, and the regalia that I'm wearing is from my clan. It's an honor to welcome all of you here. This is traditional territory of the Kiksadi people. For those that do not know our history here, the two major clans that first established clan houses here in Sitka were the Kiksadi, the Raven Frog clan, and the Kadokadi, the Brown Bear clan, who they were married into. And other clans like my clan, the Coho clan, the Raven Coho clan, established their clan houses here in the mid-1800s. So today, I want you to feel welcomed in our village. We call this village Sitka. I hope you can say that. That is where the word Sitka comes from. It translates as the village on the outside of She. The huge island that we are on is called She, or now known as Baranof Island. The ancient people used to call it Shiatika, and then changed it a little bit throughout the years to Shitika, and then shortened it to Shitka. It all means the same thing. But please feel welcome while you're here. Know that the Tlingit people are around you, and that this is our ancient homeland, and that we are more than happy to have you here. We hope that you enjoy WhaleFest and the nature that is around us that we've enjoyed for thousands and thousands of years. Our people have been in this Sitka area for 10,000 plus years. And the reason why we know this is when the Kiksadi and the Kadokadi were coming around the south tip of Baranof Island, or She, they were trying to find a new home. They were going to settle, and they were migrating. As they were coming around She, they saw something that looked like it was flashing or blinking on the horizon. They didn't know what it was, so they paddled and they paddled and they paddled towards it. As they got closer, they figured out what it was. It was our beautiful, majestic volcano that's out there called Mount Edgecombe. Our people called it Ugh. It means to flash or blink like your eye. That's what it looked like because the volcano was erupting. That happened about 10 to 12,000 years ago. That's how our people ended up here in the Sitka area. They found an abundance of food that you all know of. The herring, the salmon, the sea creatures, the whales, the killer whales, seagulls. So they established their home here in Sitka. So now you know a little bit about our Tlingit people. And the last thing I want to leave you with is the word Tlingit. A lot of people will refer to it as Tlingit, which is okay. But the way our people say it is Tlingit. It means and translates as, the first part of the word is actually Tlain, which means extreme low tide. And so the word Tlingit, it means the low tide activity people. And we welcome you here today. Please enjoy everything that you are going to learn on our ancient homeland virtually. Enjoy your time here. Thank you so much. Gunachish is how we say thank you in our language.
Welcome everyone to Sitka WhaleFest 2020. This is the beginning of the symposium and science talks, and my name is Michael Castellini from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and it's my privilege to be here with you and on behalf of the entire committee who selects these talks to enjoy Sitka WhaleFest with you. Every year we pick a different topic, and we've ranged from climate change issues to coastal interactions. We even had a talk one year about virus. And this year, the talks are going to be focused on the cultural links that we have with the ocean. Not only in our human side of how we view the ocean and what we think about it, but also the animals that live there. We're going to hear all sorts of stories about the communication abilities for marine mammals, how they move in social groups, what they do with each other in communicating, all sorts of different areas about that. And we're going to talk about leatherback sea turtles and indigenous stories and a whole range of topics, all dealing with the cultural aspects of the ocean. Why is that important to us? Why did we pick this topic? Well, you know, we shared this planet with everything from virus to whales. It's because we actually do share the planet with both of those that we're with you here today. Whales because that's of interest to us, virus because we can't be with one another. We have a long history as humans with the ocean, and it would be exceedingly boring if the ocean was just nothing living in it. If it was just a big pile of water. We would still go to the beach, probably still surf, but there wouldn't be the stories, there wouldn't be the art, there wouldn't be the culture. It's full of mysterious animals, places that we've only rarely seen, animals we only rarely see, and our links to those are amazing. The indigenous peoples that we will talk about here have all sorts of stories about things that have changed over centuries, over millennia, and those are amazing stories. They're cultural links also to the ocean. We have music that's linked to it and the animals that are there, music that is both modern and ancient. We've got art associated with that, and we're going to look at some pieces of art here in just a few minutes. We know stories of ancient mariners. We know stories of Greek coins being minted showing humans and dolphins together. We have a long, long, long history of working with ourselves, with the ocean, with the animals that are in it, and exploring the cultures of those. One thing that is dominant in all of this is the sounds of marine mammals, and we're going to be hearing a lot about that this week, but also the art. And so what I wanted to do with you, even though I'm here in Fairbanks, 500 miles from the ocean and 600 miles from Sitka, I wanted to show you some of the art that I have here at home that deals with the ocean and its animals. And from there, we'll talk about some of the different components of why we have picked this topic for Sitka WhaleFest. So let's go inside, and I want to show you some of the art pieces that we've got here at home that I've collected from around the world about the ocean and marine mammals. Okay, now that we're inside, let's look at some of the art that reflects the cultural diversity of humans and how they relate to the ocean. You know, here in the Arctic, we're quite used to like bone carvings and ivory carvings, like this beautiful carving of a ring seal, very intricate, very well done, and reflects many of the things that we see here in Alaska, Canada, Greenland, etc. Same thing with narwhals. We've talked about these at the Sitka WhaleFest. We've talked about baleen whales, and we've talked about sperm whales. In fact, we will be talking about sperm whales this week. But you know, there's a lot more than just the Arctic perspectives of culture and art. For example, we've got this wooden carving of a southern elephant seal from New Zealand. There's a long history of southern elephant seals and human interactions in New Zealand, and this piece is a pretty interesting looking piece. But southern elephant seals will actually come up on the beaches in Australia and New Zealand and attack small Volkswagens. It's an interesting story there of interactions with humans and elephant seals. And the last one I want to talk about is wooden carvings of dolphins from Mexico. In Mexico, many species of dolphins are endangered, critically endangered, and yet we still can find art pieces showing how important they are to the world and to the people. But yet they're endangered. It's things that we need to think about. Okay, so as we finish up here looking at different concepts and different ways that we've approached art and culture, let's head back outside now and talk about how we're going to finish up the Sitka WhaleFest for the next 3 days. So now that we've seen some of the art that's associated with the culture of marine mammals and the culture of the ocean, let's talk about what we're going to do the next 3 days. We're going to spend time building a story with the speakers over the next 3 days and with the classes that are going on, all looking at these different cultural aspects of our links to the ocean and the animals that live with them. What in the world does that have to do with astronomy? I have a hobby for astronomy, and one of the things that I used to teach in the classes is how we search for life on other planets. And the way we do that is we look for a living ocean. The concept that there's water, and that there are animals in that water and plant life in that water that all together create a signal that we can see from light years away with different types of chemical and instrument analysis. A living ocean is what defines this planet, and our links to it, to the cultural aspects, is what we're going to be discussing this week. We have classes involved, questions and answers, periods, all sorts of ways that we'll be working with you on this. It should be great fun. We're going to have moderators for each of the 3 days, and I want to introduce them to you. They're all young, brand new graduate students that have just recently gotten their PhDs and masters. It's Casey Clark, Madison Cosma, and Lauren Wild. They are going to be helping you through these classes. They're going to be moderating each day as we go along and giving you any announcements or anything we need to pass along those lines too. I will see you again in a couple of days, and I will wrap this up and talk about some of the things that we've discussed. And I will be talking about the living ocean and that we are one planet and we're all in this together. And once again, we share it with everything from whales to virus. Thanks a lot. I'll see you in a few days.
All right. Well, thank you for that introduction, Mike and Lisa and Chuck. I'd like to take a moment now to thank our sponsors and our partners. Sitka WhaleFest would not be possible without the support of our sponsors and our partners. Major funding was provided by the National Science Foundation, our sponsors of the North Pacific Research Board, Visit Sitka, Sitka Salmon Shares, and Salt Chuck. A big thank you to those organizations. I hope you can all join me in giving them some virtual applause. So we'd also like to recognize our partners in producing the symposium and the student courses with the University of Alaska Southeast and the University of Alaska Fairbanks. So thank you to those organizations for helping us inspire the future of science. So for those of you that have just joined or signed in a few minutes late, as Mike said, my name is Lauren Wild, and I'll be your moderator for today's WhaleFest Symposium. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Alaska Southeast here in Sitka with the Fisheries Technology Program. And I've worked with marine mammals and fisheries interactions and research in Jan Straley's lab here in Sitka at UAS for the past 12 or 13 years. I was born and raised in Sitka, so WhaleFest is near and dear to my heart. I've been coming since I was probably in middle school. And I'm excited to have this event be virtual for us this year. I'm just going to quickly go over a few housekeeping items. So our agenda for the day, there's the specific times are a little bit tentative. We might go in and out there, but we will roughly be hearing from 2 speakers each day, and we'll run from 11 to 1. And then after each talk, there'll be a short question and answer period, and we'll run that from the chat window. So make sure in the bottom of your screen, you click that chat box and you can enter your questions there. And I will run that after, as the moderator, I'll run that after the talks each day. And then second, we have some support staff here with us today to make sure the tech runs smoothly. So in the chat window, you can actually ask any questions to them by using the drop down and selecting event chat support if you have any questions, and then somebody will respond to you there. Okay, so now we're going to show a short video to you guys just to see how we're going to use Zoom over the next few days to get everyone on the same page, just in case this is your first time using Zoom or it's new to you.
As an attendee, these controls are available at the bottom of the Zoom window. Mute and unmute mutes your microphone or unmutes it. Start or stop video turns your webcam on or off. Participants opens a list of users in the meeting. In this window, you can rename yourself by hovering over your name, clicking More, and choosing Rename. You also have the ability to raise your hand and ask a question during a conference or meeting. Chat lets you message everybody in the meeting or just a specific person. For questions about the event, message Event Support. Reactions. Use this menu to raise your hand or give a thumbs up, among many other options. The Leave button allows you to leave the meeting. Breakout rooms are discussion groups separate from the main conference. Within the breakout room, you will be able to use voice and chat. When the session is done, you will be brought back to the conference. Poll questions may appear on your screen during the conference. Once you've answered the poll question, you may dismiss it. During the conference, you may be asked to participate in a whiteboard session. To be able to draw on the presenter's whiteboard, click View Options at the very top and click Annotate. At the top of the screen, you'll see various tools that allow you to draw, erase, and annotate the whiteboard.
Am I muted? No, I'm not muted. Thank you, event staff. Okay, so that was a wonderful Zoom video. I'm going to get started with today's symposium. So our first speaker today is Hal Whitehead. He's a professor in the Department of Biology at Dalhousie University, and he'll be speaking about the cultural lives of sperm whales. His research focuses on social organization and cultural transmission of the deepwater whales, but he also works on their ecology, population biology, and conservation. Hal's fieldwork is mainly carried out in the North Atlantic, particularly off of Eastern Canada, and the Caribbean and South Pacific Oceans, where he works from a 12-meter sailing boat. He's coming to us today from Nova Scotia, but he has been to Alaska before, to Skagway and Haines via the Yukon Territory. And I asked Hal a few fun questions. So I asked him what he wanted to be when he was young, and he said a naval architect. And if he wasn't a biologist, he said he thinks garbage collection looks interesting. And then I also asked him where his favorite place to do research has been. And he said Labrador and the Galapagos Islands. So we'll have an exciting talk to you today from Hal. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Hal Whitehead.
Thank you. Now let me try and share my screen. Okay. So I hope that you can see my screen now. Lauren, please tell me if you can't. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be invited to the Sitka WhaleFest. It would be even greater pleasure if I was there in Sitka, because it's looks like a wonderful place, fascinating whales and lovely people.
Hal, I'm just going to interrupt you really quickly. We are seeing your screen, but we are just seeing the WhaleFest event.
Oh, okay. Let's try the other screen. Yeah, sorry. New share. Let's try new share. So, is that better,
There we
Laura?
go. Yep.
Okay.
Right
Thank
on.
you. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm going to talk today about the cultural lives of sperm whales. So culture is one of the focuses of this year's WhaleFest, and sperm whales, I guess, are a focus of what you guys in Sitka think about in terms of whales. So I'll start off by saying a little bit about what culture is, and then what sperm whales are. I'll say a little bit about how I study sperm whales, and then of all the years I've spent studying for sperm whales, nearly 40 years now, it was one big discovery. So I'll talk about that and its implications, and it's to do with culture and about the cultural clans of sperm whales. I'll talk about the characteristic behavior of the clans, an extraordinary cultural turnover, and some contrasts, major contrasts, what we're finding between the Atlantic and Pacific. And finally, the most dramatic part, about a new defensive culture. Right, what is culture? So this is the definition that my colleague Luke Rendell and I use. It's one of hundreds of definitions of culture out there. But if you look at the definitions that biologists use when we're thinking about this topic, they they usually end up very much like this. And this has three main characteristics. First, that culture is information or behavior. So it's the thing you do or the thing behind the information behind what you do. It's the dance or the knowledge of the dance step. And it's acquired by social learning. So that's how you get that knowledge. It's from others. It's from being with others, from learning from others. And finally, it's shared by members of the group. So it ends up whereby a bunch of individuals do the same thing. So this definition includes all the sophisticated, vital elements of human culture, such as the cultures of native peoples, of European peoples. It includes opera, but it also includes simple stuff and stuff that doesn't really have any immediate function. It includes things like which side of the road we drive on. It includes things like hula hoops, which come and then go out of our society. And as I think we'll see through this symposium, whales have important cultures which include elements which are somewhat similar to all these things. So short-term, come and gone pop cultures, as well as long-term vital cultures which determine the lives, beings of the members of a particular society. Well, here's the sperm whale. The sperm whale is an extraordinary animal. It's an animal of extremes. It's extreme in many ways. So it is the largest toothed whale. It has that front quarter third of it is the largest nose on Earth, and that's used to make the loudest noise, the loudest sound of any animal. The superlatives go on. The largest muscle on Earth, the longest intestine, and so on. But it also includes elements of its social system. So one of the extraordinary things about sperm whales is that the females and the young ones are in the tropics and subtropics, whereas off Sitka and here, as I look out my window off Nova Scotia, I would only find male sperm whales. So at these latitudes, it's basically just males. So this is the greatest sexual segregation of any species on Earth. And this is an animal so different from pretty much any other creature in the ocean that in some respects, in terms of the social world of the sperm whale, which I'll talk about in a moment, the biggest comparison isn't with any other whale or any other ocean being, it's with an extraordinary land mammal, the elephant. Why that is? Well, think about that. And you've got this extraordinary animal of the deep oceans and an extraordinary animal of the African plains. Why are they so similar? Big puzzle. Well, of all the aspects of sperm whales, the one that has grabbed my attention most are their social structure. So these creatures live in two worlds. Most of the time, they're actually down deep. They're hundreds of meters below the ocean surface, trying to get their food, which is often deep water squid, but it also includes fish. And that's where they spend most of their time. But as someone pointed out, there's surfaces. They come up to the surface from time to time. And when they do this for a couple of reasons. First, to breathe, they're mammals like us. And secondly, they come up to socialize. And as we sail around with them, we can watch them socializing, and they are extremely social beings. You see them together like this. You see them touching one another, nuzzling one another, almost kissing one another. And so a large focus of my research is, what is this sociality about? And the key, to some extent, is shown here. It's what we call the social unit, which is like a little family group, about 10 females and their young, who go around together all the time. Most of them are related, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's a couple of unrelated females who, together with their young, will go along together and form a family unit. And these family units can travel huge distances. These are great ocean nomads, so they can go 4,000 kilometers across the ocean as a social unit. As they do this, they live communally. The females are making deep dives to get food, but the babies, like the one shown here, find it hard to dive as long and as deep as their mothers, and are left at the surface. And so the sperm whales arrange their dives to provide babysitting services for the young. So a sperm whale's unusual here because, for instance, if you see a humpback whale calf, baby, with an adult, it's almost certainly its mother. If it's just one adult, one calf, almost certainly its mother. With a sperm whale, that isn't necessarily the case. You see a calf with a bigger whale, could be its mother, but it could be an aunt, it could be another member of the social unit, it could be a teenage male who's just about to leave. So they babysit each other's young, they suckle each other's young, and as I'll talk about later, they communally defend themselves. So if they're attacked by killer whales or other ocean predators, but killer whales are the main problem for these guys, then they will gather together in a tight group at the surface, put the baby in the middle, and defend themselves against the killer whales. Well, the nose of the sperm whale, this front quarter third, the biggest nose on Earth, is primarily for making these loud clicks, these incredibly loud sounds, which it scans the ocean for its food. But they also use them for social purposes. And we discovered that firsthand when we were sailing with the whales. And this is how we study them. This is the boat I use. She's a 40-foot ocean-going sailing boat. And we go out for 2 to 3 weeks, usually 5 of us on board, mostly graduate students, sometimes a few undergraduates. And we're out for 2 to 3 weeks. And we listen for those sounds of the sperm whales. And when we hear them, we get the direction, and then we follow them and track them. And we can track a group of sperm whales for up to about 2 weeks at a time. And as we do this, we collect a bunch of information. We record their sounds. We take photographs of their flukes, their tails, so we can identify the individuals. We collect pieces of skin that they slough behind them, sperm whale dandruff, and we can bring them back to the lab and take them to our molecular biologist colleagues who can get the DNA out and tell us who's related to whom. And so using these kinds of data, we've tried to build up a pattern, a picture of the social lives and more recently the cultural lives of sperm whales. Well, the key to this are their communication sounds. Now, later you'll hear communication sounds of bottlenose dolphins, you'll hear them of killer whales and maybe of some other species. And they're pretty remarkable and sometimes really lovely. The sounds of the sperm whale aren't so lovely, is communication sounds. So I'm going to try and play it to you. Maybe Lauren can tell me if you can't hear it, and I'll try and imitate it myself, but hopefully you can hear the whales themselves. Those were what we call coders, patterns of clicks. And we had two sperm whales there who were making codas at each other. One would make a coda, the other would make a coda, and they did this 2 or 3 times, and then they overlaid their codas on top of each other. So these patterns of clicks, these codas are used for communication. We think they're largely used for bonding. And it was by looking at the patterns of codas that we came to our big discovery about 18 years ago. So let's first look at the social lives. So this is from our research of the Galapagos Islands. And each of the little squares or little circles here is a whale, an individual whale, which we know from their fluke photographs, so from the marks on their tails. And the lines joining them are their social links, who spends a lot of time with who. And as you can see, they mostly spend time with a bunch of other whales, which are in a blue or a red circle. And those are the social units, the family groups. And also you can see that some of the family groups spend quite a bit of time with each other to form what we actually call groups of about 20 to 30 whales. So these are the actual social units that we studied off the Galapagos Islands. But the discovery came when we looked at the patterns of codas made by the different social units. So this shows the similarity between the same social units you see on the left, but not their social similarity, not how much time they spend with each other, but how similar their patterns of codas are to each other. So if you look at the top, the circles in green have very similar repertoires of these patterns of clicks, but they're really different from the ones at the bottom, which have a different patterns of clicks. So it turns out that we call these clans after the usage in killer whales, and we call the top ones the regular clan, and this is what they sound like. So those are regular, oops, here's a few more. Those are sperm whales of the regular clan communicating with each other. One's making regular 7 clicks, so 7 clicks regularly spaced, one 5 clicks regularly spaced. And most of their codas for these whales in this top group of social units are of this regular type. The ones at the bottom sound like this. There's a bit more background noise here. Sperm whales looking for food, sperm whales doing other things, but listen carefully to the pattern of clicks. So maybe you heard this. Although the number of clicks in the codas was similar to the regular clan, each of those codas, the last one was a bit longer. So click, 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 click. Kind of like the Canadian A at the end of a sentence. And the regular clan, the +1 clan typically do this. So their codas have this extra space at the end. So we had these 2 different bunches of whales who have different dialects and only associate with themselves. So regular clan social units group with other regular clan social units, +1 clan social units with other +1 clan social units, but the 2 never get together. And this is despite the fact that they live in exactly the same area, the waters off the Galapagos Islands. So we wondered what was going on here. And obviously one thought is, well, maybe these are subspecies. That these differences are due to the genetics in the different social units of whales. Well, we checked that out. And in fact, there's no difference in the nuclear DNA, which would control for things like dialect, between the regular clan and the +1 clan. They live in the same area, there's no genetic differences, and the conclusion is that these differences are cultural. So the young regular clan female learns these codas from her mother, from the other whales in her social unit, and she grows up with them and then will pass them on to her offspring. And that is culture. So we have these different clans of whales with their different cultures in terms of dialect, but was there much more to this? So we looked at this and we found a number of characteristics in which the regular and +1 clans differ in their behavior in addition to these dialects. So here's the first one. This is micro distribution, micro by sperm whale standards. It's sort of tens of kilometers. But as you can see, this is a picture of the Galapagos Islands, the gray bits where we collected our data. And the regular ones, the click, 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 are found closer to the islands, the +1 further. Now there's an overlap there. They use the same water some of the time, but generally the +1 are further offshore. We looked at how they moved, and the regular clan move much shorter distances over a day, 36 kilometers versus 50 kilometers, or a year, 550 kilometers versus nearly 1,000 kilometers compared with the +1. And we, you know, looking back, although we discovered this 15 years after we collected the data, I look back at my records, and when we were following the +1 clan, it was super easy. They're going in straight lines. We just sail our boat and off we go. But with the regular clan, they kept turning around and going off this way, going that way. So, well, we also wanted to look at feeding success. Now, the sperm whales feed hundreds of meters below the surface, which is a problem. So we can't really see them eating stuff. But luckily, they defecate, they shit at the surface. So instead of watching them eating squid, we watch brown patches behind the whales. And that's our measure of feeding success on the assumption that what went out must have gone in. And if you look at the right here, this was in 1989, which is a normal, I'd say cool. Galapagos is on the equator, but it's actually the coolest place on the equator at sea level. And that's because the ocean upwells there, and there's lots of life, and water comes up from the cooler deep ocean. And in those circumstances, about 20% of the time that regular clan animals dived, we saw shit, a brown patch behind them. With +1, it was much less, about 8% of the time. Now, if you move to the left-hand side of this diagram, now we move to 1987, which was an El Nino year. The waters of the Eastern Tropical Pacific warm up, and in places like the Galapagos, it's bad for pretty much all marine life. Everything suffers, including the sperm whales. And you can see this. And so in 1987, most of the days we were following regular clan sperm whales, we saw no shits whatsoever. Whereas the +1, which normally did a bit better, a bit worse than the regulars, didn't do so bad. They had about 3% of their dives had defecations. So not only are there feeding differences, differences in feeding success between the clans, but there are these differences depend on the environment. And these sorts of differences seem to translate into their success in having, reproductively, in having calves. So the +1 groups almost always had a calf with them, a baby. But with the regular clan, it was only about 50% of them had a baby. The other 50%, there were no very young animals. And there are also differences in social behavior between the clans. So an important measure is dive synchrony. So when the regular ones, the regular members of the regular clan dive, they tend to do it synchronously. A whole bunch will dive together and then all under the water, they come up and then they'll dive again about 45 minutes later. In contrast, the +1 clan are more spread out. One dives, another dives, and so on. And because of the babysitting, it means that the the +1 pattern is probably better for helping the young ones survive, because there's almost always someone up with them during the feeding periods. Well, there are other characteristic behavior differences between the clans, but the important part here is these clans of sperm whales not only include dialect differences, but a range of other differences in behavior and so on. And we've certainly only covered a tiny bit of these characteristic clan behaviors. These clan behaviors, again, would seem to be cultural because there's no genetic differences between these clans and they're in the same waters. And so we can think of these sperm whales as having multifaceted clan cultures. They have a whole range of things which they do in a different way to the other guys. So we've got these different clans off the Galapagos, and this shows the data, the years in which we collected data, which the previous slide summarized the behavior. So between 1985 and 1995, we had the regular and +1 clans off the Galapagos. Well, we went back in 1999 and there were hardly any sperm whales there. We don't know why they all left. It's a puzzle. I have some ideas, but they're just ideas. And when we went back in 1999, there was just one unit there, one social unit, one of these family groups, Unit T, and it made completely different coders to either the regular or +1. It was from what we call the short clan. And that was a surprise. And then as that went on into the 2000s, the whales left the Galapagos. So we didn't go there and do any studies for a long time until 2013 and 2014. We went back, the whales had come back by that time. But when we listened to the sounds, it was a huge surprise. It wasn't the regular and +1. It was social units from the short clan, like Unit T in 1999, and another clan, the 4+ clan, which we found in Chile in the intermediate time, but had never heard before of the Galapagos. So this is as though you go to Montreal and some of the people speak French, some of the people speak English, and then you go back 15, 20 years later, and yeah, there's still two groups of people there, but some of them are speaking Italian and some of them are speaking Urdu. Extraordinary. Again, I don't really know why this happened, but it just shows the breadth and complexity of sperm whale culture. Well, this shows the scale of these clans. So that short clan that turned up in 1999 and later on was found right across the Pacific. And the scale of these 4 clans are thousands of kilometers. You know, they go right across the Pacific there. Well, we've also been doing research in the Atlantic and in a different, mainly in the Eastern Caribbean. So here's our Atlantic study area. See it in blue on the far right of this? It's a tiny part of the kind of range we covered in the Pacific. And here it is blown up. And once again, we have clans. We have the EC1, the EC2, and the little EC3 one. And they have very specific use of areas only 20 to 100 kilometers apart. So behind each of these islands in the Lesser Antilles, you find a particular clan. That was a huge surprise. So there's a totally different scale in the Atlantic and the Pacific. And again, we don't really know why. Well, finally, I'd like to talk about something that happened much earlier in the 1820s. And this is when we humans were getting into killing sperm whales in a big way. We were sending out ships, well, from places like Nantucket and Bedford, all around the world to catch sperm whales, because in that wonderful nose of the sperm whales was the finest oil in the world, and it was worth a hell of a lot. And so the owners of this ship were the Texaco of that era. Well, I'm going to introduce a little study here on a new and strange culture, and well, not strange, a new and important culture of sperm whales, using a couple of clips from an old movie, which some of you, perhaps those of you who are near my age, may recognize. I'll explain it in a bit. Anyway, it starts off as a little sort of hymn to the glories of marine biology, which I like.
Ever since the beginning of time, man has pitted himself against the power of the sea to learn its secrets, to solve its mysteries. Many stories have been told of ships and the men who sail them, of sea beasts and the men who hunt them.
Okay, I stopped it there because this is the scene I want, and he got cut off a little bit, but he was saying, "Ah, she blows." He's just sighted a sperm whale. So remember that. That's event one that I want to concentrate on. Okay, so this is the 1956 Moby Dick movie with Gregory Peck playing Captain Ahab. And if we move on in the trailer, here we have a little bit later.
Oh, did you see him, man?
Okay, I've stopped it again, and this is the second point, when they harpooned it. So I'm going to be talking about the interval between the sighting of the sperm whales and harpooning or striking them. And to do this, I'm going to use digitized records of American whalers. This digitization was done by the Census of Marine Life, who digitized a lot of the logbooks of these American whalers, mostly after 1818. And I'm going to consider what happened in the North Pacific. And the reason for this is that I heard some suggestions from historians who are working with other species, not sperm whales, that whales quickly learned how to defend themselves against whalers in the very first years of whaling. And the historians suggested this, but they didn't really have the quantitative data to show it. But they were going on the writings of the whalers whose lives they were studying. So I used this large and detailed detailed database, which the Census of Marine Life put out, to look at what was happening in the North Pacific. And the reason why I used the North Pacific is that this was first exploited after 1818. And so this shows the positions in the North Pacific in which sperm whales were sighted by these whalers, and the date at which they were first sighted in each area. And as you can see, it starts off in about 1819. And in this area, whaling for sperm whales started in 1819 and was largely, almost entirely done by American whalers. So this logbook record shows us what's going on. And here in this graph, it shows the results of our analysis. So on the y-axis, up here, are the strikes by sighting days. So this is every day that they said, there she blows, how many whales did they kill? So in the very first years they were out there, it was about 1 whale killed per sighting. But within about 5-6 years, it has gone down to about half a whale per sighting. And it stays that way. So there's about a 58% drop in success by these whalers, by Captain Ahab and his like, in these first 4 or 5 years. So the question is why? What was going on here? So I don't know, maybe you've got some ideas. If so, put it in the chat and Lauren's going to look at them. And I'm going to go through one more slide in the meantime, and then I'll ask Lauren if there are any ideas out there. And I'm interested because I'm trying to compile all the possible reasons why this might be the case. Okay, so this illustrates the data. This is from a whale ship, the Alexander, from New Bedford. She left New Bedford on the 18th of August, 1821, and off she goes. She goes to the Azores, picks up some crews, sees 1 sperm whale in the Atlantic, but goes through to the North Pacific, finds lots of sperm whales, sees lots, kills a bunch, goes back to the South Pacific for the winter, up again next summer in the North Pacific, kills some more, sees some more, and then goes back home, seeing just, again, 1 more in the Atlantic. So that is the typical kind of voyage pattern of one of these whalers. And as you can see, this took nearly 3 years, this voyage. So for that era, that's not untypical. Well, let's see. Lauren, have we got any suggestions?
Yeah, we had some folks think saying maybe the sperm whales figured it out, they learned, or the whales that were easier to catch had behaviors that made them easier to catch had already been caught. They learned and passed down knowledge to their offspring. They watched and learned. So we have lots of messages like that. Maybe a change in crew to less experienced whalers. And then just to note how we're running a little low on time, so we'll have to wrap up pretty quickly here.
Okay, good. Those are exactly the answers I come up with. So that's rewarding. The earliest whalers were the best. The vulnerable whalers were killed first. Units learned defense individually, and units learn defense socially. And in fact, these last two are about learning methods. And so the last one is the one that actually mathematically fits the data best. And that's the idea that naive social units, ones which hadn't met the whalers before, rapidly learned effective defensive measures from experienced social units. So this is part of what some of you came up with. And it fits the data better than any of the other explanations. The ones you came up with were splendid ones and certainly possible. So we asked, what are the defensive measures? Well, I think the first one, and most important, is to stop congregating, to stop doing what they did when attacked by killer whales, as they're doing here, to gathering at the surface, stop slowing down, putting the calf in the middle. Good for killer whales, really bad for Captain Ahab, who'd just catch you with his harpoon. They would alarm each other, they would flee. They were pretty fast compared with the whalers in their rowboats. They would swim upwind, they could dive deeply. All of these would make them really hard to catch. And finally, they could attack. So what we have here is right across the Pacific, we have a rapid social learning of a new thing, a new way of defending themselves against a new threat on a very large scale. And this is very, very unusual. So this rapid new culture. Well, in summary, for a female sperm whale, culture is vital. That's what makes her a sperm whale, and that gives her her behavior, allows her to find her way around the ocean, and these seem to be cultural animals every bit as much as we are. These cultures evolve very rapidly in the face of new threats. We get these strange cultural turnovers, and there's so much more to learn. So thank you very much. Oops, and it's significant for management and conservation. So those different clans responding differently to El Nino will mean they will respond differently to climate change. So this is really important as we think about conserving these animals. And I'd like to thank all the people who helped me figure all this out, and to the organizations which funded it. Thank you.
All right, lots of virtual clapping going on. Thank you so much, Hal. That was a wonderful talk. That was really interesting. So we're running a few minutes behind, but I think we have enough time for one or two questions. We had a few in the chat during the talk. Deb would like to know, are there other whale species that use clicks for communicating as well?
Yes, there are. They aren't as well known as the sperm whale, but it looks like harbor porpoises do. That's not exactly a big whale, but it's of the same family. And the other species we study, the northern bottlenose whale, another deep diving whale, also seems to use clicks to communicate. And I suspect others will as well.
Yeah, and then so then Logan asks, do they utilize the clicks for echolocation as well?
Yes, so that's their primary purpose as we see it. These sperm whales, these clicks are largely a wonderful sonar system.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then Laura asks, are sperm whales endangered?
Well, in the United States, they are endangered, yes. So the sperm whales were less badly affected than some of the other big whales because the modern whalers got to them last. So there were relatively more of them around. And we hoped that when commercial whaling stopped in 1982, the sperm whale populations would come back, as have some others like humpbacks. But the sperm whale population, there's very little evidence for that. So there's a lot of concern here.
Yeah. Let's see. Taylor says in Dr. John Lilly's book, The Mind of the Dolphin, he talks about how the sperm whale is believed to have the most intricate or incredible memory of any species. In one chapter, the neuroscientist postulates that a sperm whale has the neurological capacity to listen to a 90-minute symphony one time and recall any part in detail afterwards. The reason I bring this up is because perhaps the decreased success of whalers is a result of social learning. Perhaps some whales and social units were able to escape whalers and pass on their methods to the next generations.
Absolutely. That's what we think happened, that they, the escaped ones were able to pass on their information. Yeah, that's what it looks like happened. We don't know much about the brain of the sperm whale. Now scientists will denigrate John Lilly and say, well, no, when he said those things, people denigrated him. But as we learn more and more, from sperm whales, from other whales, dolphins, and so on, it looks like actually he was pretty damn close to the mark.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's see. Simon says, have you found differences in the food consumed or specialization for specific foods between clans?
We found a little bit of difference. So we've used things called stable isotopes, which give us an idea of what the animals were eating. And we found differences between the regular and +1 clan in their stable isotopes. So it looks like they eat somewhat different things, but they aren't hugely different, as you will hear about tomorrow about the orcas, where the different ecotypes really have different food. So my thought is it's actually more, they have different ways of moving about, and so they run into different stuff. And so that means they have somewhat different diets.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Let's see, another question. Is it common behavior for a female to forage, dive, leaving the calf at the surface?
Yes, they do that. The calves are left at the surface, and the females start foraging and diving very soon after the calves are born. But then the calf, sidles up beside some other female or even a young male. And so it's the village caring for the kids.
Yeah. And then I think we just have time for one more. Adrian asks, over the years you've been recording these clicks, have you been able to potentially translate some click behaviors and potentially communicate with the whales themselves?
No, we haven't. We'd long to do that. When we first started hearing these, we thought, oh, this is, some of you may know Morse code, right? Which is a pattern of dots and dashes we use to communicate. It sounds a bit like this. And so we thought, well, maybe click, click, click means come over and babysit my calf or something like that. But the more we looked at it, it didn't seem that that was the case. And these coders seem more about bonding, about social life, than they are about conveying specific pieces of information. So in that piece I played, you probably don't remember, or it may be so weird you didn't actually assimilate it, but there were two whales codering back and forth, and then they put their coders on top of each other. It's kind of like a duet. And so we're now thinking that we had all these years we were looking at it wrong, looking at particular meanings. And so instead of thinking it from a language perspective, we're thinking of it more from a music perspective, and how music allows us to bond, how it allows us to reinforce our social systems and so on.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm glad you brought in the music point there. I've always thought, as a musician myself growing up, that being a musician and using that side of my brain helped being an acoustician. So I think there's a lot of tie-ins there, which is interesting.
Yeah, I bet you're a much better acoustician, certainly than me, and in most of our colleagues who aren't musicians. So yeah, I've noticed that. I mean, Roger Payne, who discovered the songs of the humpback whale, he was a fantastic musician, and that musicality in his brain allowed him to be open to what was going on, to discover something that nobody had even thought about before.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm getting a cue here that it is time to take a quick break. And so we might play a couple of videos, and then we are going to get started with our next talk here in a few minutes. So grab a cup of coffee or take a bathroom break, and we'll be back with you in a few moments.
What makes great science education? Communities across Alaska have amazing teachers, deep connections to place, and strong cultural foundations. But when we look at state science scores, one thing is clear. Sitka stands apart. So what's the Sitka difference? We believe it's our unique Scientists in the Schools program. Evidence shows that scientist engagement in classrooms can increase achievement and interest in science, and can play a major role in a student's decision to pursue careers in STEM fields. So in 2013, thanks to a USDA Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian Serving Institutions grant, an innovative approach to bringing scientists into classrooms was created through a partnership between the University of Alaska Southeast and the Sitka Sound Science Center. In other communities, teachers may invite a scientist into the classroom occasionally. But our philosophy is early and often. The Sitka Scientists in the Schools program deliberately places scientists at each grade level, following students from kindergarten through high school, offering opportunities each year to dive into the world of science like never before. The heart of the Scientists in the Schools program is the practicing researcher in the classroom. But the backbone is the collaboration between classroom teachers, scientists, and science center educators. The result is robust, experiential lessons that connect directly to current research and fit neatly into every grade level's curriculum. Additionally, the program trains scientists to make personal connections with students and to create unforgettable classroom experiences. In a given school year, the USDA-funded Scientists in the Schools program makes it possible for first graders to conduct intertidal field studies with a NOAA scientist, for fifth graders to practice salmon hatchery techniques with the aquaculture director, for sixth graders to inventory settling plates for invasive tunicates as part of the Smithsonian Plate Watch program, for ninth graders to measure and collect squid samples for population studies associated with a Stanford PhD project, and for high school chemistry students to conduct qualitative studies of antioxidants in Alaskan berries. The results over the past 5 years have surpassed all expectations. During the 2017 to 2018 year alone, scientists were in 78 different classrooms, reaching 91% of those enrolled in Sitka schools and touching the lives of over 1,500 students. Standard-based assessments in science show that our Scientists in the Schools program results in sky-high science scores for all students in Sitka, including our Alaska Native students. Scientists in the Schools, Sitka style, works.
Day 17. Our travel through the Inside Passage continues. Every day I'm more amazed at the bountiful wildlife. Every day I'm more amazed at the incredible
All right, welcome back, everyone. So we're going to get started here with our second talk of the day, which is from Heidi Harley, and she'll be talking about how dolphins stay in touch through whistles, clicks, and blats. Heidi's a comparative psychologist who studies how dolphins think. She teaches courses in comparative psychology, environmental studies, and animal well-being at the New College of Florida. She's studied dolphins at a dozen facilities throughout the United States and collaborated with marine mammal researchers from around the world. I asked her a few fun facts as well. She said she has swum with dolphins a lot as a trainer and on some catch and release research projects. She actually wanted to be a teacher or a writer or a mother when she grew up and is lucky to have been able to be all of those things in her life. So that's pretty cool. And then I asked her if she wasn't a psychologist, what would she be? And she said maybe a fiction writer. She's coming to us from Florida today, but she has been to Alaska twice as a tourist and then for a meeting. So she's gotten to see some of the Kenai Peninsula, Denali, and the Anchorage area. And we look forward to at some point welcoming her to Sitka in 3D in real life. So I'm going to turn it over now. So please join me in welcoming Heidi.
Hello, hello. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. And we can see your presentation.
I am psyched. That's cool. So you can see me and hear me. That's great. I'm so excited to be with y'all. There's so many different kinds of people on this call, you know, people from a fourth grade class, it looks like, in Alaska. And here I am in Florida, hot and in the sunshine. And I wish I were with y'all. So today I'm going to talk about how dolphins stay in touch, whistles, clicks, and blats, which is part of their communication system. And so thinking about this from the point of view of culture and communication, the topic of the Sitka WhaleFest this year, you think about what it takes to have culture. As Dr. Whitehead just pointed out, it takes a society. So you need to have a group that learns from each other and communicates. As the people in Sitka do, obviously, I so wish I were there learning more about your culture, although I really loved hearing more about it today. But you have a society, you have all kinds of cool things to learn about, and you have a really cool history of different kinds of communication and all kinds of people who are there now who speak in different languages. So I would love to experience that. Today, we're also going to be part of a science culture. And so I'm going to be talking about dolphin culture, but actually I work with all kinds of scientists, a lot of whom more than this, but will be represented in somehow one way or another today. And we're going to be using a sort of science learning system, which is a learning system through mentorship, where you have someone who mentors you through science to help you solve mysteries using scientific methods so that you can get to discovery. And science really runs on questions. So we're going to talk about those questions today because the questions endure and sometimes the answers keep changing, but the questions keep persisting. And so what I want you to notice in the background right here is that there is actually science going on right in front of your eyes. That's a dolphin solving a puzzle in front of the public. And a lot of my science gets done in front of the public. And so you're going to see that in some videos. And so you're going to even hear the public in the background, and that's what's going on there. So today I'm your mentor, your science mentor, to investigate the mysteries of dolphin culture and the methods we use to investigate them and then discover what's going on. So as your mentor, I'm just going to begin with a little what my daughter calls puppet show about how I happen to get to studying dolphins. As your mentor today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up mostly in South Carolina, in Charleston, South Carolina, right along the coast. I really enjoyed the beach and beach houses and doing things in the ocean. But since I was allowed to pick where I wanted to go to college, I decided to try something new. So I wandered off to the mountains of Colorado. I went to the University of Colorado at Boulder. And it took me years, literally years, my poor father, to decide what I was going to study there. But while I was out there, I decided I wanted to study dolphins. And so, as you can imagine, there weren't a lot of dolphins there, and there wasn't a big marine program. And so I wrote lots of letters to scientists around the country, and some of them wrote me back to tell me how I might want to proceed and what I should study to study dolphins. And I learned lots of different things, including that there wasn't a lot of consensus about what I should study. But one of the people who wrote me the best letter was Ken Norris, who was a famous dolphin scientist. I was so excited the day I got that letter in the mail. And he suggested that the first thing I should do is find out if I really enjoyed doing this and I should become a trainer at an oceanarium. So I left Colorado after graduating in philosophy, actually, and went to Florida where there were many facilities where I could become a trainer. And I got a job at Miami Seaquarium in Florida where I could study many different species and learn to train, including dolphins and manatees. After my experience in Florida, I decided I really did want to know more about these animals, and so I decided to go to graduate school and learn how to study how animals think. So I went off to Hawaii, which is an amazing place to live, and worked with some folks at a great marine lab there, the Koala Basin Marine Mammal Lab, which was, in fact, the only place I could go to graduate school to study what I was interested in studying. And while I was there, I got to work with multiple species, learn all kinds of things about studying how animals think, and work at multiple facilities on the island. So after I got my PhD, I decided to become a college professor and went back to Florida to be where I'm now teaching, New College of Florida, which has turned out to be a great place. It's right on Sarasota Bay, which is where the longest studied population of wild dolphins in the world lives. And I'm also able in Florida to study dolphins who are under human care at multiple facilities. And so that's a great way to learn more about how dolphins think. And that has brought me to you today. So that's a little bit of my story. Weird as it is, it turns out that it's not an unusual kind of story. People make all kinds of decisions on the way and end up different places. So so thinking about science culture and thinking about Sitka culture takes us to thinking about dolphin culture. So do dolphins have the kind of ingredients they think we need them to have? And in fact, they do. They have a society. There are groups of dolphins. They learn from the environment. So for example, they learn where things are and they remember where they are and go back. They learn from outcomes. If something good happens after they've done something, they're more likely to do it again than if something bad happens. And they learn from each other. So they imitate each other and they do other kinds of things that require social learning. And they have a sophisticated communication system about which we don't know as much as we wish we knew, but we'll talk about today. So back to this dolphin society, it turns out that there